Hello, I'm Amy Zaby with the Jerusalem Connection Report Red Alert for Wednesday, March 28th. Anti-gun, anti-Israel, anti-consistency. In California, some of the most stringent gun laws exist. In California, some of the most vocal gun control activists live and work. In California and among college campuses nationwide, some of the most loudest mantras are to hold in contempt the NRA, legitimacy to gun ownership of any kind, outright disdain for the Second Amendment, and an intolerance to any image of guns, jokes about guns, even if it's in the sense of self-protection or self-defense. So the goal lately in the communities around the country at the student level and among the adult level is to blame the gun, vilify the gun, and outlaw the gun rather than think about the people that are holding the gun. Be this all as it may, agree or disagree, my point here isn't to debate that issue. You can find that probably on another YouTube channel. My point here is that the University of California, Santa Barbara, arguably one of the most liberal and anti-gun communities one might find in the country, let alone in California. Their anti-Zionist group called the Students for Justice in Palestine published a series of images last week on their Facebook page that appeared to condone violent terror attacks, and the Facebook posts included a photo of a Palestinian woman holding a pistol, as well as a cartoon drawn in the outline of Israel and Palestine depicting a woman with an AK-47 assault rifle. Now, please keep in mind that the UC Santa Barbara already passed a resolution about a year and a half ago banning on campus any anti-Semitic rhetoric or activities. I would call those posts rhetoric, but let's go on. Another photo featured Lilia Khalad, who helped hijack 2 planes in Europe on behalf of the Popular Front for Liberation of Palestine, a Marxist-Leninist group that's already been labeled as a terrorist group by the U.S. government. They had a quote under that one that said, "Solidarity is the weapon and armed resistance is the catalyst. Support all measures taking arms against imperialism." Now, not all SJP chapters particularly agreed with these posts. Many voiced some concern, but not necessarily condemning them either. However, UC Santa Cruz's SJP did repost the posts in their entirety. My point here is that one can be anti-gun or pro-gun, I suppose, based on the issue at hand and not as a general philosophy, perhaps. The very argument that the SJP had made about being armed against what they perceive to be an imperialist government, a government that might try to do them harm, well, that's sort of the argument of the Second Amendment and the NRA. That citizens can be armed against such unjust government that may arise and seek to harm them. So I'm wondering if I just discovered that perhaps the liberal social justice group at the SJP may actually have a common philosophical underpinning with the NRA. Maybe it's a little bit ironic, or maybe it was just an accident. I'm not sure, but it's certainly interesting to think about. Now, all this Facebook stuff happened in an era where Facebook is seeking to ban many things that are so-called hate speech or bullying or that kind of not feel-good attitude. Prager University, for example, is a conservative constitutionalist group that offers 5-minute videos on education and commentary for free for folks on various social media sites, and they've been banned from YouTube, or some of their content has, and labeled hate speech. Barry Shaw, a proponent of Israel's right to exist and an author of many great books regarding BDS, Israeli historical figures, just always posting and writing very thoughtful pieces about the nation of Israel. He was actually banned for 2 weeks from Facebook for so-called hate speech. That has since been reversed, so you can look up Barry Shaw. But if you're holding up a gun and threatening an organization, a group of people, anything, that's not considered hate speech, I guess, in the eyes of UC California, Santa Barbara, let alone the Facebook watchdog groups. However, Paris, France isn't putting up with any of it. Prime Minister of France, Philippe, noted just last Monday that he is tightening up social media laws in his country, and this comes as 28 European Union countries are working on revising rules regarding Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Google in being more proactive in filtering out hate speech on their platforms. Philippe went on to say that basically he's taking already intact communication laws on his books that are applied to newspapers and applying them to social media. He said, for example, these days a newspaper director is criminally responsible if hateful comments are posted on his website, but if you run a social network, anything seems to go. He goes on to say, nobody's going to convince me that social networks live in space. What gets published and circulated in France is published and circulated in France and must answer to the laws of the French Republic. Philippe went on to say that France was tightening up its rules, regardless of the progress the EU makes, but he did not elaborate quite on how or when that was going to happen. Now, the balance, of course, is to find how you can ban hateful speech and speakers and writers, but maintain the notion of free speech, which is a very Western value. This issue is ongoing right now at the University of Arizona, where a group called CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations, filed a lawsuit last week against the university in the district court in Phoenix on behalf of the Muslim students. The student Islamic group invited a speaker to campus who actively rallies for BDS activities and boycotting Israel. The Muslim Student Association invited Hatim Bazain, the founder of American Muslims for Palestine, to speak at an event in April. But Bazain, a senior lecturer at the University of California, Berkeley no less, said he would not sign the speaker's contract because of a clause that said no boycott of Israel that was added to those contracts after a law was passed in March 16th that Arizona would not do business with people engaged in BDS. Bazain is also a proponent of the BDS and divest and sanction movement targeting Israel measures all over the United States. The lawsuit that CARE filed is to declare that the Arizona's anti-BDS law is unconstitutional and to order that the university and its board of regents remove the no boycott of Israel clause from its speaker's contract. The claim is that the clause constitutes a viewpoint of discrimination that chills the constitutionally protected political advocacy on behalf of Palestine. Now, this whole thing could quite possibly be moot because a university spokesman told the Arizona Daily Sun that the wrong contract was actually sent to Bazain since student groups are not public entities and are not actually subject to that BDS law, anti-BDS law, and are not required to sign that particular clause. Thus, the lawsuit might just be a lot of smoke blowing since the contract was sent the contract is designed only for those people being employed or speaking on behalf of public entities, and this Muslim student group is actually a private entity. Therefore, the freedom of speech is actually protected because the University of Arizona said they were going to send the correct contract, which for these for the private groups, which actually does not have that clause. Now, we don't want to confuse people with the facts here because I think CARE got a hold of this and is pushing this lawsuit in order to get BDS laws around the country thrown out as unconstitutional, yet they want to gloss over the fact that an error was made in which contract was used for which context, and the result is that there is no violation of free speech because it is protecting the clauses removed for those in the private sector. I'm going to keep watch here on what happens and what judges decide as this moves forward, but I do believe it's a red herring to find ways to challenge these existing laws, which don't actually hinder free speech in the private sector. But we know that they want to capitalize on the perception and not the reality. So we'll be praying about that fact. Shavua Tov, have a great week.